So hello and welcome to the China Masterclass Webinar. My name is Paul Sutton. I'm one of the co-founders of LCN Legal, which is a law firm with offices in UK and China. I'm joined by my fantastic co-host, Sally Meyer-Yip, who is an expert on China-related PR. And she's also the founder of a specialist China PR and communications agency called 11K. We are very fortunate today to have as our special guest Ryan Lee, who is the founder of Dere Street Capital, amongst other things. And today is a really fantastic opportunity to get inside the mind of a young business leader like Ryan. But I'll let Sally give a bit of a fuller introduction in a couple of minutes. Before this, in case this is your first China Masterclass webinar, a couple of words on what it's all about and what we're trying to achieve here. So the focus of this series of webinars is very much how to create long-term trust, value, and relationships in relation to China. And each webinar, we interview an expert in a particular field, and the focus is to give actionable insights for you, the viewer, in terms of your own China-related business. So with that, I'll hand over to Sally to give a bit of a fuller introduction.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thanks so much, Ryan, for joining us from Shenzhen in China today. It's really our honor to have you with us. I think I've known Ryan for over maybe 5 years now through our work. And I have to say, I'm personally super inspired by what Ryan is doing. I'm much older than Ryan, but I think Ryan has achieved far more than me. As far as I know, Ryan set up his own charitable fund when he was only 16 years old. Ryan set out Sino British Summit when he was only 20 years old, of which I attended myself 2 times, and I'm very inspired by the quality of the conference. And I know you also recently set up your own venture capital, Dere Street Capital, to help Chinese firms to go global and also to help Western firms to go China through joint ventures and unique investment. So today, the theme of the webinar, as Paul said, is about inside the mind of the second generation of the Chinese family business leader, and why it's really the face and the person to ask. So we are super honored to have Ryan here today. So to kick off with, maybe we go back to the age when you were 12 years old, that your parents sent you to UK, Scotland specifically, when you are 12 years old. Could you tell us why your parents chose UK but not US, Canada, or Australia? Thank you, Ryan.
Of course. Well, firstly, thank you very much, Sally and Paul, for this wonderful space for me to, to share my thoughts and my understanding of, fellow second generations who like me, who is trying to create something special in this globalized world, for China, for the UK. So to answer your question, let's rewind the clock back to when I was, 12, 11?
11.
So I think when I was first pitched by my family of going abroad, I was about age 9 or 10. I didn't really have a clear idea of what life would be outside of China. I only been to a few countries abroad at the time. And for me, that, China has always been my home and my only place that will grow. Looking back now, I probably spent more time in the UK than I did in China over the past 10 years. And one of the first things that I think my family chose UK is the importance of tradition. We both believe, we as in myself and my parents, we both believe that tradition is the key essence to bonding up a society. China, as Sally probably know more, that China has a very strong sense of tradition embedded in our festival, to custom, to every, for example, in Chinese New Year we have the lucky red pocket. These are the sense of tradition that has been carried out throughout the past hundreds of years, and we believe UK has its own tradition that is unique and that is long last. And my family want me to be able to combine both sides to combine the best part of both society and to become a more globalized citizen, a more globalized young generation that can not only master the Chinese culture, but also have a very comprehensive or holistic view of the global, how the world works. So I think that's one of the first reasons, is that both countries have deep sense of respect for tradition and is rich in history. And the second part that we believe UK-wise is, I think, we always view UK as the heart for a traditional, a more comprehensive education, not from its leaders that we have seen. UK has a strong link with Hong Kong, and as we are from Shenzhen, we spend a lot of time in Hong Kong. We have huge influence by our family, friends, by our colleagues in Hong Kong, and more importantly, by the feeling of, well, through a gentleman society in Hong Kong, and the understanding of how tradition works with contemporary culture, works with the current affairs. We in China, our family believe that some of our cultures are very much a little bit behind the current world. The world is changing in a much faster pace than what they were born in 1960s. My family were, and they want me to be able to catch up on the latest development in the world, not only in science, in technology, but also in the mindset, in how the world works, in critical thinking. And we believe UK is the perfect place to have that best of both worlds, from the East and from the West. So I think these are the two, most important points why we chose UK as the starting point of my education.
Okay, so our next question, Ryan, is you set up the Ryan Lee Charitable Fund at the age of 16. I think certainly for me, when I was at that age, charity was the last thing on my mind. I was focusing on a lot of other things, a lot of them relating to survival at that point. So what was your motivation, and how do you see your charitable activities changing over the coming years?
Well, I think my family has quite a strong influence on many actions that I took when I was, before 18. So one of the key essence when I started the Ryan Lee Fund was that throughout my stay, when I spent with my family back in China, during summer or before my time in the UK, my family always taught me that great wealth, like our family are fortunate enough to have, come with great responsibility, and that responsibility need to be translated in a more concrete manner. And that could be building a school, that could be building a library. But for me, I think the best way to giving back to the society or giving back to my fellow peers back in my school is to give them the tools, the network, the opportunity to grow. I mean, my school, I went to a quite prestigious boarding school back in Scotland for 5 years, and my school had numerous alumni and family network and very strong bonds within our alumni network as well. But before I started the Ryan Lee Fund, there wasn't really a crystal clear manner or structure of how to put your ability combined with your alumni network together. So I think what my fund was trying to do is trying to mitigate the miscommunication between our successful alumni or our families, our parents' family, with our current pupils. So the goal of Ryan Lee Fund is to support students who are interested in economics and politics, because that was my interest. So I put this too as the core of the Ryan Lee Fund, to support students who are willing to go a step further. Let's say who are willing to take up an internship at age 15 or 16, or who are willing to look out for a mentorship opportunities with the prestigious alumni, let's say in America. So I'm trying to use Ryan Lee Fund to give them the financial support, and more importantly, to give them the incentive to say, oh, let's try one step further than what I did before. Perhaps I only read the FT, once every week. That was my understanding of the financial world. But with Rally Fund's financial incentive, perhaps I want to go a step further to reach out to the editor, who is actually one of our alumni in the FTC, whether I can ask him to be my mentor for the next year or so, or whether I could get an internship from the FT. So these are, I guess, my way of, I think, trying to giving back to the school who has taught me a lot, and to giving back to the peers who I think will be greatly benefited by our great alumni network and by the small amount of cash that I have raised from our alumni, to go a step further to achieve what I really want to do. Not only at age 16, but I hope whatever I can help them at age 16 can become a beacon for them to go a step further when they step into the university or they step out of the university.
Okay, so it sounds like it's the focus is helping the students to really expand their network, taking advantage of the existing alumni, but actually giving them practical tools so that they can reach out.
I think it's also giving them the practical incentive to tell them that, if you just, let's say, write an extra email, then you can actually achieve a lot more than what you thought might be a difficult thing to do. So I think, that's how I want to, I guess, to leave my mark at my school, to help the school in some way, at least in the smallest way that I can do, to cultivate next generation's leaders, to cultivate young leaders who are willing to be bold, to be, to be more incentive, to push forward their own goal, their own dreams.
Yeah, really interesting. Okay, and so earlier this year you set up Dere Street Capital. So what was your motivation for that, and what was the gap in the market that you saw in relation to that?
So let me give you a bit of background on Dere Street Capital. So Dere Street was the first street that connected Scotland and England, built by the Rome back in about 1200, I think. So I want to borrow that name for a reason. Not only because of my connection with Scotland and England, but I want to use Dere Street Capital as a way to connect talented startups, not only in China, but in the UK, to connect them with investors, with entrepreneurs, with business leaders who share the same mindset of an entrepreneurs, to connect these two societies together. I'm not saying they are not connected now, but I have a clear focus in China. That is connecting the second-tier regions of China with the UK startups that has a more fundamental background in university level or in the more incubation stage. People may be familiar with Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, or Hong Kong, those mega cities. But I think just like Scotland and England back in 1200, the second-tier regions of China, Chongqing, Chengdu, Jiangsu province, we have Nanjing. These regions are the next 20 years future. And from my understanding, these cities, I'll take Jiangsu province as an example. Jiangsu province is next to Shanghai, and it has about less than 10% of the Chinese population. But its GDP is about 10% of China. It's the second wealthiest province out of 34, and its GDP from 2019 is equivalent to Australia. But because of the province is very much rooted in its industry of manufacturing and trade, export, import with Japan, Korea, and a lot of European manufacturing, is yet to be standing out as the next sort of technology hub. Suzhou, you may know that Suzhou is the city that is getting attention at the moment. We have Oxford University setting up its research lab in Suzhou a few years back, but Jiangsu province as a whole is yet to getting up to the stage where we can put it in the same rank as Shanghai, as Beijing, as the international capital center. So these are the regions that I have been trying to build up the bridge, to build up their streets, to connect with top UK talented startups. So that's in the essence what we're trying to do, is to help British startups to tap into a market, to think big about China, bigger about China, not only in the coastal cities, but a bit more inland with a focus on the second tier regions. With less international competition, but equally amount of opportunities, of capital injections, of talents, but more importantly, to build up the understanding that China is not only the four cities, and China is very much open to welcome more talented startups, more talented UK companies to have a foothold in mainland. So that's in the essence what Dere Street Capital is trying to do.
And is it mainly technology companies that you're focusing on, or is it any sector?
So we have 4 sectors that we're trying to push forward. So I mean, technology is quite a big term at the moment. So we have education technology, we have financial tech, we have fintech, we have health tech, we have, you know, we have a clear focus on AI, we have a clear focus on education, and we have a clear focus on healthcare. So these are the 3 key sectors that we believe we can add on a little bit more value to it when they use our support, when they ask for our help. We can bring them, I guess, the best opportunity in China.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, next question was a little more general, if you don't mind.
Of course.
So I'm sure lots of people must be trying to sell you things all the time. You know, when they kind of notice your background, they will think that they can sell you all kind of stuff. So just really interested to hear what is it that makes those kind of approaches more successful to you, in terms of what you're more likely to respond positively to, and what approaches are likely to be less successful trying to sell things?
Let me answer in 2 parts. So although I don't represent my family's business, I don't have a strong representation in it, but I guess I will answer the first part is to how people sell it to me, how I approach someone, and then how my family would approach that. So I think that's quite a 2 different approaches. My family is quite traditional Chinese, and although our business are across different countries, but our headquarters remain in mainland China. Whereas I am more based in the UK, and I have a better understanding or a clearer understanding of where they're coming from. So to me, the biggest point that I would be looking at when they're coming to me, when they want to engage in China, is whether they can be more open-minded regarding their approach to the Chinese culture. Because normally when people come to me, they're not asking me to introduce them to Chinese abroad. They're asking me to introduce them to Chinese who are still in mainland China. Then we come to the culture shock, you know, of where the drinking culture, of where the way we communicate. For example, you know, in China we use WeChat rather than, you know, email or iMessage. And when people come to China and they don't have WeChat, it's a clear, I guess, a misunderstanding of how we do business in the first way. I mean, in China, we don't really exchange name cards anymore. We only scan our QR code on WeChat. That's how we do things. So that's I guess, these are the smaller points that when people come to me and when I say, oh, so have you done any preparation of China? You know, what have you, let's add on each other on WeChat. If they suddenly ask me, oh, what's WeChat? Then it will give me a little bit more question mark on their motivation of whether they really have the mindset of whether they are tapping into not only a different country, but a completely different culture of how we do things. That's how I guess I look at it in that way. And I'll bring it back to my family. So I think a family business like us, so we are an investment holding company based in Hong Kong and in Shenzhen. We are, I guess there are 2 clear criteria my family will be looking at. The first part is trust, and that would take time. If you are Chinese, because the language are easier, it may take less time for us to build up trust. But because if you're Chinese and not fluent, and you need a translator, so sometimes I will play that role, then it would take a lot longer than people may imagine. You know, it's not just signing a contract or signing an MOU. It's not as simple as that. It takes time to build up friendship. In China, we believe business are being done after friendship are being made. You know, we believe the best contract in some aspect are who introduce you to us. So if you are being introduced by a close friend of us, then we will, you know, then that trust of the friend or that introduction how it's being made is equivalent to a contract written by the best law firms. So I think that's one of the, I guess, the mindsets of how we can do things. And the second part is how much willingness you are willing to adapt or to change your product to fit into the Chinese market. Because in China, when my family is looking at different projects, we will be looking at how good and how well adaptable with this product being, can we use it in China, in mainland China. You know, we don't really, to be blunt, we won't take the consideration of, oh wow, this is well received in the UK, because the market share size is completely different. You know, a province like Guangdong province is the size of the UK as a whole. So if you're saying, oh, I have 20% of the UK market, it doesn't really mean you can translate that into 10% of China, maybe even 2% or less than that. So we will then be asking the founder the question of how well or how much are you willing to do to transfer your product to make it more Chinese adaptable, or how well you're willing to, let's say, give up your share for us to be able to help you find a local partners that can really bring it down to, you know, bring it to the ground rather than, you know, higher up in the UK market's understanding. So I think these two parts are what my family are looking at. They're more practical, and they are more, I guess, they're more business minded, and they are more time consuming. Whereas from my personal side, from a guy who are based in the UK and China flying around, I would look at the smaller, I guess, the smaller parts of, let's say, how well or how much have you been doing research on the way we speak, the way we talk, or how well have you done in researching the smaller, you know, how we do handshakes, how we drink in China. These are smaller things that I am more tend to be interested in helping you. So if you are match all of that, then I'm much more willing to, I guess, to be your friend, you know, to help someone that I believe I can trust, that I can bring it to China to support your goal.
Yeah, makes complete sense. Thank you. Sally, back to you.
Yes, fascinating. I guess just to on your point is to show that the person has commitment to the Chinese market, that they do their homework, not just trying to get the shares of the cake without doing any hard work. So that's really good point. Let's try to be more fun. So I know you must be super busy. So I really want to know, what do you West? And if you West, what do you do for fun?
So, I mean, I do. So I'm a big chess player. I used to play for my school back in Edinburgh, and I won a few more smaller awards back in the UK. So chess is one of my favorite games, but it's quite quiet. And I can play it by myself or with a friend, but only two. So apart from that, I'm quite a frequent traveler. I have been to just below 40 countries in the world, and you know, Europe, because I was in the UK for quite a long time. So, and European countries tend to be quite small compared with Australia, America. So I have been traveling in the UK for quite some time. Yeah. And lastly, I like to hike. So in my spare time in Shenzhen is, for those of you who don't know, Shenzhen is the southern part of China. It's only a river away from Hong Kong. So from driving from Hong Kong, it's only half an hour into Shenzhen. Shenzhen is quite flat, but we still have quite a bit of mountainy around Shenzhen. It's not as high as the one in mainland, in the center part of China. So yeah, I used to do the Duke of Edinburgh Award back in the UK. I guess that is why I like to hike now, because I kind of get my incentive from, you know, doing Duke of Edinburgh for 4 years from 2011 to 2015. So that's, I guess, chess player, traveler, and a hiker.
Great, great. Very fit and very healthy. So I wonder, what kinds of publications do you read? Do you even watch TV, or are you on WeChat constantly? So what kind of media do you consume?
So I think I read, okay, 3 types of different medias every day. So the first type are those more financial based, so Bloomberg, etc., Morningstar. These are more professional or figure based, and I read that every, I guess, 3 times a day. You know, the market news, etc. And then the second part are the more in-depth reading that I do, and in that aspect, I read 2 publications mainly. The first part are SCMP, so South China Morning Post. So it's a very interesting newspaper from my perspective. It's owned by Jack Ma, but it's normally, I guess, from all the newspaper in mainland China or from Hong Kong that I have read, SCMP are the most neutral, but also most critical of Chinese policy. So I think it can give me a sense of how, well, because the fact it's owned by Jack Ma, you know, and how much is allowed to be written against Chinese domestic policy or international policy, that gives me a sense of where the national policy order, where the private sector is viewing the government's actions. But that's the first part, so SCNP. And the second part is Product Syndicate. So it's not really a publication, but it's a syndicate, and is a very good professional, in-depth reading of world leaders who are willing to submit their time to write pieces of editorial or publications to put on that website and for everyone to read. So, and that gives me a more insight into a global market and a global view rather than just in a financial world or just about China. Third part is actually, the third part, I guess, is skimmed reading. I read a lot of, you know, those kind of news on Weibo or Chinese Twitter or WeChat. So Weibo is quite interesting, is that every minute they will refresh the hot topics of the day. So that means they will rank hot topics by how many retweet or how many hashtag of that topics. So every minute they refresh that. So I will, you know, when I have time, I'll go on that and see what are the hot topics that have been trending in China, because there are 1 billion users on Weibo, and you know that will give me a sense of what's people's interests, what's people's take on things, and what are the, I guess, the top interest, top trending for the past few days. So these are, I guess, the 3 sort of channels where I get my information from.
Excellent. I know you are still in your early 20s, but let's say you are already 80 years old. So fast forward, how would you want people to describe your life or yourself?
Well, it's a very interesting but very tricky question. I think I think the only thing I would like people to say about my life is Ryan Lee's life is worth him doing it again. I guess that's the only thing that I would like people to say about my life. Because I mean, I haven't really achieved much that I wanted to do. And I think when I reach the age of 80, I want people to, you know, think my life has been worse, has been, you know, giving back to society, and it's worse for anyone to trying to do this over and again.
Great. I'm sure you will hit your goal.
Yes, so the next question is similar. In fact, it's 2 questions, and it's in the context that your family obviously has more wealth than most people can imagine. You know, most people in everyday life, and so in that context, what would make you feel like your life has been a success, and what would make you feel like it was a failure if you hadn't achieved that?
Again, another very, I guess, a deep question that I guess I don't really ask myself that every day. But I think from time to time when I reach, I guess, a bottleneck in my career or in my personal experience, I would ask that sort of thing, you know, what is success for me? I think I'll answer that in 2 senses. The first part is I'm far more interested in how I can make people, or not make people, but to encourage people to remember me as Ryan Lee, as Li Zongyang, that's my Chinese name, rather than I'm a family of, of whom, or I'm a son of whom.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think, one of my key, key goal, you can say goal, or that's something that has been always pushing me to go abroad, but to go beyond what I have been doing. And that's what has been pushing me to do stuff that is outside of what my family has been doing. For example, the Sino British Summit, Dere Street Capital, these are the areas that I haven't really used any of my help from my family, nor does my family do the similar stuff in China. So I think that's the first point. And the second point of what I feel would be a success is how have I empowered people? How have I empowered people around me? Or I guess more importantly is how have I empowered people who put their trust in me, who are willing to follow my path, who are willing to follow my goal together. So I think let's say take example from the Ryan Lee Fund or from the China Masterclass Summit to now Dere Street Capital. I think, in my understanding, the success of how to define the success of Ryan Lee Fund, of the China Masterclass Summit, of Dere Street Capital, is how much I have been part of someone else's journey to their success. Let's say the Ryan Lee Fund. If for some reason I am lucky enough to be able to support a pupil that somehow become, let's say, a world leader, then I would feel I have been in some way influenced he or her path toward he or her goal in the end. And that, for me, is a successful event in my life, or it's a successful, well, it's a success to me. And again, with Dere Street Capital, as we mentioned before, Dere Street Capital, we are trying to help UK startups to go into China. I think I am, well, I'm not trying to be the venture capitalist who say, oh, I have invested in this, in that, or, I have somehow exited in so many companies, I become so successful. I think I want to push the entrepreneurs, the startup, the founders at the forefront of whatever that I have been helping them. They are the key aspect. I am just a guy who has been lucky enough to have their trust and to be able to support their path, and to be part of their journey to grow, to continue. So I think that for me is success, is how I can empower, how I can help people, and how I can be able to, I guess, not to disappoint their trust in me, in my organization, and in my ability to support them. So that's to answer your question.
Great answer, thank you. Okay, so final question, and a bit more down to earth. So specifically for UK businesses, opportunities in China, specifically in the coronavirus or post-coronavirus environment, what do you see as the big opportunities that UK businesses can be going for right now?
Are you talking about with China or more local?
Yes, with China specifically.
I think. Well, let me give you a bit more background on, since I have been back in China for, I guess, just nearly a month now, and I have been reading, speaking, talking to the government officials, my local partners, and there are negative elements within the market at the moment, but I do believe there are also positive elements that we can grab. So I'll go for the negative first. The negative sentiment is that cash will be quite a tricky issue in Chinese private sector. That's one of the first point that I have to point out, and that I have been increasingly made aware that not only in our family, but in many government officials they spoke to me that their top taxpayer may not be able to do the same amount this year. So I think that's cash issue. And the second point is, well, you have to understand the current international environment isn't very friendly with Chinese capital or with anything that China has branded on it. And especially with the Hong Kong issue, I think people may be a little bit more skeptical regarding whether I should put a big focus in the UK or in Europe. I think as long as that issue remain for, I guess, next 4 to 6 months, we may not see a strong, well, I don't think we will be able to see a strong outflow of investment from private sector from mainland China because of the international reputation, and well, businesses are quite risk averse. We don't want to take unnecessary risk, especially given, well, not even Trump, but from a little bit backlash from the Hong Kong issue in the UK. And last point, I think, is about education. Education will always be a key bond that connects China and the UK. We've seen the recent post, I think, by either FT or by BBC regarding China. Oh, sorry, it's by the British Chamber of Commerce in China and British Council. They named UK as the #1 countries for Chinese students going abroad. That surpassed US because the US current far more unfriendly than the UK on the students visa examples. So I think that could be an interesting point to look at. However, as we partners with quite a lot of universities across, we have been receiving news and updates regarding universities themselves are a little bit skeptical regarding how many students would actually come in to the UK this coming September. May not be the case for undergrad, but for postgrad, for 1-year master degrees, they might rethink, oh, I'm only going to spend a year in the UK anyway. But if this year become online, there's no point for me to do that study. So I think that's the 3 risk factors that in the more the general private sector, global affairs, and in education. However, I think there are also 3+ where we can look at opportunities. First point, again, I'll go with the 3 structure. Education. I think education remain a very strong point. And I think that would down to how different university or how different companies to adapt in the market. I mean, take example of, I think, Queen's University in Belfast. They have agreed to have a chartered flight to China to pick up their own students. So these are the sort of the gestures I think Chinese would like to do. I mean, in the mindset of Chinese families, that they would love to send a kid abroad, and the only reason that's stopping them is the health factor. But if the university can do whatever they can to mitigate that, to reduce the risk or reduce the exposure, then I think people in China are going to do everything they can to have a better education for their kids. So that's the first point on education. And the second point on the private sector, I think although private sector are a bigger risk, if it is an interest for businesses in the UK and in Europe, state-owned enterprise can be a way for them to tap into the Chinese market. In the past, people may be a little bit more skeptical regarding SOEs or state-owned enterprise because they are communist government backed. They are, they're more bureaucratic. They are less pragmatic. But I think with China going more global, with China standing up in the world, in either WTO or WHO, in different international organizations, China has seen the misunderstanding of how the outside world sees the state-owned enterprise. Hence why there has been numerous reform being happening in China. For example, there used to be no board of governors, there's no board of directors in the SOEs, and that has been put in place in many high-level SOEs. And that board of directors must include independent directors. So a much more internationally aligned structure of board of governance has been put in place in China. And secondly, in terms of the investment side of the SOEs, I think it has been a trend in China that if you want to go into venture capital, you either go into a secure those kind of international named IDG, those international background VC firms, or you go into government-backed venture capital, because these venture capital firms are full of of recruits from MIT, from Harvard, from Oxford, and they're the top talents of the returned scholars from abroad. And China wants to use that as their platform to go abroad. China understands that the current existing Chinese technology is good enough, but we need, in order to, to be able to lead a way forward in the next 50 years, we need to be able to attract talents. We need to be able to attract and to understand different markets, top technology, top talent. So that's why we have seen we have seen from abroad, we have seen investment being done that is in highest standards of international investment community. So I think if the misunderstanding of SOEs can be reshaped, we may see a bigger opportunities in that. And last point regarding how Chinese international affairs can influence the investment opportunities, I think if we can build up a mutual understanding on how Hong Kong issues can proceed and going forward. I mean, for the past 2 years, people have been questioning whether international investment banks, international companies will pull out of Hong Kong because of the riots for the past year or so. And I think the answer has been they are not pulling out. We are seeing more and more investment coming in from either mainland China or actually from Singapore. I'll take example, people have been asking whether Singapore could replace Hong Kong. And although I can't say definitely it may not happen, but let's take facts from last year. Apparently Singapore, this figure may not be true, but apparently Singapore only has less than 5 companies listed in their Singapore Stock Exchange throughout 2019. And last month alone, China had 3 large companies had dual listing in Hong Kong. So we have seen actually an increase in capital inflow and in international market back into Hong Kong. And I think the reason behind that is, firstly, coronavirus has become, I guess, a new norm in Asia, in Hong Kong and in China at least. So people have a more trust in that it's not going to have a rebound. Even if it have a rebound, like Beijing, China will be able to tackle that swiftly. So I think the trust issue has increased, and stability-wise, I think we have seen what worse could happen. We have seen a worse scenario, which is last year, the fire, etc. And we don't believe that's going to get worse than that. So we have seen a rebound in trust, in the feelings of that. And lastly, Hong Kong is the place where I think it's the best place. We have the most transparent legal system. We have the most sophisticated financial systems and tax systems. I think if the current security law issue can subside, can calm itself over the next 4 to 6 months, I think the international investment opportunity will rise again, and Hong Kong will be another hub that international business can come into China through that as a gateway.
Great, thank you. So Sally, back to you to wrap things up.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Ryan, for all your insights and really valuable advice on what's next in China.
Well, that is my own opinion. I can't say much on behalf of many of my peers who has been doing a lot more greater things than I'm doing.
You're too humble. Still much big thank you to you. Unfortunately, it's coming to the end of our webinar with Ryan today. If you are a listener today, thank you for joining us. And if you like this webinar, please do help us to share with your networks. And if you have any feedback or requests, please do feel free to email us at ChinaMasterclass@11kconsulting.com. And we will see you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.